Hey everybody, thanks for getting our DVD. This is Brian with the Superior Auto Institute. I'm a 22-year veteran PDR tech and trainer, hail tech, auction tech, you name it tech. I can pretty much do it all. After 20 years of doing this stuff, it's part of your life. Anyway, today we're going to talk about sharp dents, creases, and the strategies on how to do them, the tool usages, and then we'll do some demos and you can watch us in the lights and figure out the process. And at any time, if you have any questions, give us a call. 888-992-3464 is our domestic and Canada number. International, 949-305-2692. Or you can catch us at nodents.com, and we have emails on there to help you out as well. Okie doke. Sharp dents. There's a couple different types of sharp dents. We're going to be talking about sheet metal, not so much aluminum on this demo. Sharp dents, you're going to have the pointy style sharp dents that look kind of like a cone. That's some guys in the detail centers at dealerships will use the wash wands and they'll hit a car with it. I've seen 22 bullets hit cars, make deep sharp dents. Really pointy edges of doors can make sharp dents. Sharp dents are prevalent out there if you're doing door dings, not so much for hail, but they're common, so you really need to know how to do them. The good news is when you know how to do a sharp dent, they come out fast because there's actually less metal to push if you do it right, if you focus on the focal point. Another thing regarding sharp dents is stretch. You want to focus the stretch of the metal and hide the actual stretch as best as possible. And we hide stretch material. We don't get rid of it, we hide it. That's what PDR is. It's a matter of optically hiding the extra material that's been present by stretched metal. So that's what we're going to do with sharp dents by creating texture. The better you are at minimizing your texture and dissipating the texture throughout the area that you're working in your workspace, the better the dent's going to look. When you see dents that are kind of lumpy, if somebody takes a deep dent and just puts 3 or 4 hits in it, well, you're going to have a bunch of heavy hits. That's heavy texture. Anybody and their mother can see that, and that's not going to pass. It's just not going to be to the level that us that regard PDR as an art, it's going to be acceptable. After sharp dents and stretch, we have creases. And creases themselves are dents that are just like the cone-style dents, but they're just drawn out. And in our next section, we're going to talk about the strategies and how to attack these dents and get good, favorable results. And we're back. All right, we're going to talk about sharp dents, the actual technique. We're going to start with the standard sharp dent, and then the next section we'll talk about creases. When you get a sharp dent, like I spoke about in the first section, where you've got like a pointy sharp dent, deep center, the first thing about when you do the sharp dent is to actually get yourself in the middle of the dent. In a soft dent, you can work the perimeter, and you're actually shrinking the dent down. Everything is good and hunky-dory. But when it's in a sharp dent, you got to be pretty much dead center, within about the middle, let's call it 10 to 15% in the middle of the dent. And when you're trying to locate yourself into a sharp dent, the first thing you want to do is drag the tool. Okay, so when you're reading the sharp dent on the hood or the panel, drag in and out, and then once you get yourself to the edge, it's pretty much just an estimate to get to the middle at that point. And then when you're trying to actually locate yourself, I should say, in the center of the dent, we do what's called edge reading. Because when you're pushing and you're actually near the bottom of this dent, when you kind of got yourself in the middle area, you can't see the tool when it's way down here. There's no way to identify the tool. And you don't want to start pushing on the outside edge. So by edge reading, what you're doing is you're utilizing, you're utilizing the edge of the dent. When you start to push up here, you'll notice that the dent characteristic will show you if you're in the middle or you're off to the side. When you're in the middle of this dent, you're starting to push your way up from the middle, it'll shrink uniformly, kind of like a camera aperture just shrinks down. If you notice an anomaly or something strange on one of the sides, guess what? It's that you're off to the side of the dent. So if it's not doing it like this and you actually notice that you got something going on, you start somewhere nice, it starts to shrink down, you're pushing, it's kind of coming together, and then all of a sudden there's like a flat edge, or we call this little Pac-Man mouth or something. That means you're too far to the side, and adjust. And this edge read technique is usually going to be necessary for the first third or 2/3 of the dent until you start really coming up close to the center. Then you'll get a normal read that you would get on a soft dent. And you can pick up where the tool is and then maneuver yourself around. But sharp dents, the reason that people struggle with them so much is because you have to have a good eye and you've got to be able to find yourself in the middle. So edge read, look at the dent shrinking uniformly, and then once you get it up, find yourself in the center and keep going. In the next session, we'll talk about opening it up and continuing on with this dent. Okay, the second section about doing sharp dents, we talked about doing the edge read where you're looking for your tool as it comes up from the bottom of the dent. You're reading the perimeter of the dent, not the center, because you won't find your tool tip in the deep part of the dent. The second part is you're actually going to start pushing up. And if you have a real sharp dent, and there's really no way for me to explain exactly what's sharp and not so sharp, but if you see something where you're not seeing your tool moving hardly at all, and it's got a lot of depth, a lot of darkness in the bottom of that dent, you will need to open it up after you push maybe about 1/3 to 2/3 up. So 1/3 to 2/3 of that dent comes up. You've shrunk it down, let's say, about 1/3. So let's say we're at this spot right here. Stop, take your tap down, and tap down the dent. And what that's going to have the net effect of doing is flattening the metal. So what you once had with this deep-looking V, you tap down, and it's going to open it up and give you more of a U-shaped dent. All right? And continue to do that if necessary. When you start pushing up again, you should see the tip a little bit easier, and the edge read should be a little more simpler. And if you notice that you're getting it up, but it's still got some deep depth in there, once again, tap down again and open it up. Opening and flattening your dents and taking them from V's over to U's and then eventually completely flat is the key to taking this dent and not creating too much texture and making it easier all the way. And additionally, kind of stepping backwards, when you're doing a deep dent, I recommend using fog lights, LED lights instead of lines. I believe that the fog is a much better instrument and a soft edge versus a hard edge for illuminating the depth of a dent, a deep dent versus a soft dent. Soft dents you can use whatever you want, but on the sharp stuff, I really recommend you use the fog. So we've done the edge reading on the sharp dent. We've opened it up. It's going to come up. It's slowly going to work its way out. If you have any problems, you can also use heat. When we have really deep dents on body lines or near a panel edge or where the depth's incredible, like a bullet or something, you can actually use some heat that will soften up the paint and the metal. It's mostly for the paint, really, to keep the paint from cracking. It will activate the flex agents in the paint, make it a little more gummy and more flexible, and you shouldn't get paint split. So definitely you might want to use heat when you're working on sharp dents, especially if they're super deep or in a stressed area. Okay, next section we're going to talk about creases. Okay, we're back. We just covered the basics and the essentials of sharp dents. Now we're going to talk about creases. If you can do a sharp dent, a crease is not really much more difficult. It's just a sharp dent that I tell students has been just kind of drawn out and elongated. In some way, some creases can actually be easier than sharp dent depending upon the depth and where they're located, but never fear. So anyway, I've got a couple of my famous artistic drawings here, my Van Goghs, if you will, of creases. Here's a crease right here, and just like the sharp dents as we mentioned, the most important thing about when you work a crease is to stay in the center. And I always tell students, when you're working a crease, if you can and you have the access to it, always try to enter from the end of the crease. Don't start off kind of coming in from the side. That's a no-no. Try to come in from the trough, from the edge going in. It's just like entering a swimming pool. It's much easier to kind of come in and wade your way in instead of jumping off from the side of the deck. The reason being is you usually can find your tool more adequately and get yourself lined up to the center than coming from the side. The side kind of is guesswork. And unlike a round sharp dent, you actually should have a soft trough coming in from the side. So that's a benefit. You get lined up in the center and start walking your way across, that's half the battle right there. So going back to what we talked about in the first section with sharp dents, you're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be doing the edge read. So when you enter in from the edge and you start to push, you're going to look for the compression. You want to see from both edges of the crease that they pull together uniformly. If they're pulling together uniformly, guess what? You're doing the right thing. If you notice one side's pulling, the other one's not, you're too far to that side. So just like when we talked about when you're reading the round dents and they compress like this, uniformly, same thing with creases. They got to pull together uniformly. The idea is we want to pass along the center and stitch the dent. So you're going to make passes. If it's a real deep, gougy type of crease, you may take 2 or 3 passes kind of going down the center and then come back again and maybe open it up and even go a 3rd or 4th time. Sometimes these really deep creases, unless you don't mind having heavy texture, you want to do several passes. But we call it stitching because you're going to go maybe about every 1/8 inch or something to make it hit, and then repeat and repeat. And as far as the depth, like I mentioned, opening is necessary. If that dent looks like it's starting to kind of close in, and you're not hitting the center, but you're hitting the outside edges, tap down the edge, open that dent up. Remember, we're always taking V's, and we're turning them into U's. So next part, we'll talk a little more about advanced creases. And we're back again. Thanks for sticking with us. We're back on creases still. We want to talk about some more advanced techniques about doing creases. First of all, we didn't talk about the kind of tools you're going to be using on your sharp dents and creases too, which we will touch that when we actually do the demonstrations. But you typically soft dent, soft tool, sharp dent, sharp tool. So you can use a bullet style tool on some of the intermediate style creases, but when they get real sharp, I recommend using a sharp tool. Some people like using the softer tools, and to each his own, but I've done thousands of creases, tens of thousands, and the best results for me have come out with sharper tools. So I can only go by what my personal experience is. All right, so we talked about stitching. That's where you're walking down the center line of the dent, and you're watching the compression. Everything's pulling together uniformly. It's shrinking down. It's going from a deep V to more of a shallow V. Heat. We use on really deep creases, especially in your bylines or panel edges or corners, complex corners and curves. We'll use heat. I'll take a MAP gas torch. I'll heat up the panel a little bit. Once again, it's more for the paint benefit than it is the metal. If you heat the metal up enough to make it super soft, you probably long gone and cooked your paint. So it's more to save the paint from cracking. I mentioned white versus black. If you're going to crack paint, cracking black paint, usually you're not going to see the clear when it cracks. And when you do spider cracks, you crack white paint, you're going to see it. The contrast is dramatic. So, take more liberties with your black versus your white. Aluminum versus sheet metal / steel. Aluminum is very flexible metal, so you're going to have to over push aluminum to get the same net result as sheet metal. So it's kind of good in the sense that you could probably find your tool tip earlier and not have to worry about doing so much edge reading. The bad thing about it is you have to push the paint farther, it can stretch, it's more physical work. Another good thing about aluminum versus sheet metal is there's no metal memory basically in aluminum. There's no iron content. Iron is the property that makes sheet metal have memory. So if you make a high spot, that's what we call memory, that when you come near it again, it's going to want to pop back up twice as easy because you've already hit it and it remembers, so to speak, because the characteristic of sheet metal and steel versus aluminum. So aluminum is nice that you don't have to deal with all that. All right, so once again, stay at the center, make a couple passes if it's a real deep dent, open it up as necessary if it starts to close up, and keep working your V's until they go to shallow U's and eventually they're flat. After this, we're going to do our demonstrations. Okay, we're back. We're going to do our first demonstration with a sharp dent. We're going to be using sharp tools, which are going to be blade tools. I've got a little bit of tape. I recommend using a little bit of tape if you can. Feel free to use a bolt tip or a softer tool if you want, but I've always liked to do sharp tools with my sharp dents. We've got a cone style shaped dent here. I made it with the tap down. So we're going to get our camera in here on the LED light. Position the light edge through the center of the dent. I'm using a green LED here. It's going through the center of the dent. You're going to see a shadow. If you like using stripes, feel free to use stripes, but I'm not a big fan of those for doing deep dents. Alright, so I drug my way through. I'm pushing near the middle. I'm watching the whole dent compress. And I'm going to try to stay in the middle 10% or so of this dent as I'm pushing it up. It's starting to come up pretty good. This one definitely has a lot of depth in it, as you can see. No high spots yet. So right now it's about down to about maybe 3 or 4 millimeters. I'm making constant slight adjustments as I'm pushing in the center of this. Maybe a millimeter left, a millimeter right. Trying to dissipate, hide all that stretched material within about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters of an area. Okay, right now it's about to the point where it wants to start going high because we've got everything compressed. So we talked about opening up. I'm going to open this up with the tap down just a little bit. We're going to take this deep V and turn it into a U. Okay. There wasn't any high spots. The dent's basically just starting to close off. Alright, so I opened up around the perimeter, and we're coming back with the tool again. right back to the center. Now it's starting to look real good. Like I said, these are lots of light little hits. That's looking pretty good. What do you think, cameraman? Looking nice?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go. Okay, we're now on our second demonstration. We're actually going to do a crease. You can see we got about a 5-inch crease right here, relatively deep. Once again, I made the crease with the edge of the tap down so you know it's razor sharp. I'm going to use a blade tool once again. I'll probably go left to right. Hopefully I can make a pass in this maybe 1 or 2 times, and then if we have to open it up, we'll do that. Here we go. We'll start on the left-hand side. Feel free to either use the stripes or the shadow. So remember, we enter the sharp dents creases from the edge of the trough. So I'm watching for that uniform compression. I see it pulling together equally. That's how I know I'm at the center. You just stitch this. Just walk down the line. Okay, we're about halfway down. And I'm just watching for that uniform compression. Taking my tool, pushing up, watching for the shadow to fill in with the green light. Or if you're a striper, watch the stripes pull together. Okay. About another inch to go, looks like. If you get deep creases and you have a lot of texture, some guys will wet sand them too. Kind of make them look a little bit more even. If you're going to wet sand a crease and you're close, I recommend you block wet sand. Don't use paper. I'm just going back for a little bit more touch up. Looks pretty good. I don't see any high spots. Just soft low. Alright, how's that look, cameraman?
Looks excellent.
Alright. Okay, we're going to recap what we just talked about, what we just did. We did the demonstrations with the sharp dent, and we also did the crease. Hopefully the camera was able to pick up for you in the LED light, the tool movement, and how the crease was slowly starting to shrink together. Same with the round sharp dent where it started to pull together uniformly. The key to doing sharp dents is edge reading. A lot of people try to do the soft dent technique on sharp dents. Doesn't work. You got to do the edge read. You got to look at the perimeter before you start seeing the center. All right, so work on those skills. Open. You open the dent when you have a super sharp dent, and you start to push, and you notice it's starting to seal up and come